Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Season 1, Episode 9 of Stanley's Lucky Man. Hopefully I'm going to be able to get through this review, because really I should have went to get some sleep time about an hour ago. So we're just kind of pedaling on, because I wanted to finish today strong with getting this done, so I can just be kind of more relaxing than usual. Kind of because normally I'd just be stressed about like, oh my god, when I'm gonna get another one of these done. Um, but anyways, this episode is going to be the big build up of this show. Who's going? What's going on? Is Richard going to leave this prison alive? We'll find out. Really, in this episode, it's like this big build, and eventually there is a reveal at the end of this, like toward the end of this episode, and people are like, ah! People gonna be, ah! Or people gonna be like, I knew all along. I knew it. I knew, uh, I knew it was so and so all along, like since Pilot or whatever, since the time that I saw this character. I knew Harry was Golding all along, or is he? Probably not, because why would they make multiple seasons about a Golding? That would be confusing. That was Harry. Uh, and how would we have not have known it was Harry all along? So really, in this episode, we are to focus where that head had come from and what apartment that it came from, which was Harry's. And so it seems that Harry is really going to have to go out of his way to eventually go into prison in this episode. But the more that Harry is kind of going to the prison, he's starting to realize that it seems there's this buildup of people saying it's like, well, hey, like, if anything, like, there's like one guy who's controlling everything in here, and like, even the prisoners are going to have to get like word from him, the guards are getting word from him. Like, this Golden guy has pretty much bought and paid for everyone in this whole entire like everywhere, it seems. So like eventually I'm gonna have to like respond to him at some point. So it seems. So going on in this episode, we really like start to see like whose side are people really on. Like, we start to see Anna, who like before was getting really cozy with Julian, and all of a sudden Anna in this episode is really just like, man, I really just want to like spend as much time as I can with Harry. Winter and Surrey are like, especially after they discover that head in Harry's spot, like, really Surrey is asking like where Winter's like allegiance really lies, because Surrey is to eventually ask about Harry and Winter's past to try to understand like where Winter is head is at right now. So Orwell is also just being a douche in this episode. Like, man, we're really like seeing that, like, since Orwell can't get a win and Harry always has to be right, like, Orwell is just like, yeah, I'm bitter about that. And so, like, now I have to just kind of hold things and just not let Harry get a win here. Like, I'm gonna, like, he'll get this win, but he won't get it today, kind of thing. So pushing into this movie, or pushing into this episode, really, it kind of comes down to a lot of both Rich and Harry in this episode. There's a lot of that going on in this episode. but like kind of everybody like this episode does kind of go all over the place also. Like it seems like we're like with Surrey and Winter, but we're also with Harry and Rich, and then we're with Anne and Rich, and then we're with Anne and Julian, and then we're with this episode goes all over the place. Winter and Fearsome and like yeah, there's so much going on in this episode. So I think it's that coveted time to go out of our way to say I think it's that spoiler time. Let's get into it. So I like this episode because big reveal, but I also just like this episode just because like we're getting to the end of this first season. Really, I'm just kind of interested. I think I kind of just said that, like, well, hey, maybe I'll just cover the first season, and then maybe after that, no one is ever gonna have any interest past that. But I don't know if people want me to continue covering this whole entire show. I will try to do it. Like, I realize that there's been a lot of delays with getting this out because really like I always question the staying power of a lot of things. Like I just naturally assume like oh yeah, like I'm sure like people will like this for a second and then I'll be right back where I am, but it seems like this show has technically had a lot of staying power for me to just go okay, like all right, like I'll I'll keep going into this show if people are interested. Like I'll keep going into this and check it out. So without a doubt, I think it is that time to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. I think it's about that time to spoil this episode. So let's get into what Harry is up to in this episode. So Harry is up to going to jail forcibly because they found a head in his freezer. The home that they were breaking into at the end of the last episode was Harry's. I didn't realize that until watching this episode. I'm like, oh, that was Harry's place? Oh, okay, because it slipped my mind. So they go into Harry's place and find a head in the freezer. And so immediately they're like, dude, we gotta book Harry, murder, like, do it now. And so Harry's like, dude, you know what? I'm a freaking detective. Like, if I were to murder somebody, why would I keep the guy's head as a trophy? Like, that just kind of seems dumb. Like, wouldn't I have figured out a way to just get this guy the heck out of here and whatever? Like, why would I be keeping this guy around? And so Harry is also uh, kind of telling people when this guy was last seen by him and try to like see if he's telling the truth or not about all this and that. And so Winter is mentioning that there is a bit of time that Harry is kind of like unaccounted for, and Harry mentions that he was knocked out for that amount of time, and so really once he was to wake up, he was just to gather himself and drive away. So Harry, after like having Winters just kind of just tired of hearing Harry talk, Winters starts to walk away, and Harry starts mentioning about uh, the Maria, who's Eve's mother again. Like he starts mentioning about her uh, about Eve's mother. Like I don't have my IMDb here, and plus also I don't have any notes really of this episode. Because I'm kind of just going like just like offhand. Like I'm just kind of like I've seen so much of these episodes. Like I should roughly know. Like I shouldn't have to take detailed things in this one. Like because it's mostly about Harry going to the prison. So Harry is to be convicted of this crime because eventually it seems that Orwell is like, dude, we don't have enough on Harry. Like, Orwell goes to Fearsome and he's like, dude, we don't have enough on Harry. Like, there isn't enough evidence stacked together to convince us that Harry is the culprit of all this. And then all of a sudden, the very next day, we have uh, the other half of that guy's body that had been grabbed, and this guy is to have a knife on him with Harry's print, so obviously he's the killer. Here's the funny thing though. So the coroner is to mention that this guy is to die from a shot in the chest. So where did the knife go? Why is it that Harry is tied to this just because they found a knife of his somewhere, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me? Because I'm like, but that's not how he died. Like, they could have made the consensus that maybe the knife was to chop off this guy's head, which that seems flimsy, but still, like, I guess they could say that, like, that's how Harry possibly killed him, was to take this knife and chop his head off with the knife, which, whatever. But, so, Winter is starting to have all this evidence just stacked up. And Winter is like, don't you think that this is kind of weird that all of a sudden, like, we have all of this evidence against Harry? Like, this seems really weird that all of a sudden this just, like, falls out of the sky and, like, to try to convict Harry to get him in this prison and get him locked up. This seems really weird. Like, it seems that Harry had gotten too close to something, or that Harry was right about something. So, Harry is to get pushed into prison, and before he is to go, Harry is to mention to Surrey, like, if anything, like, I still believe in you, Surrey. Like, I still know that if anything, like, you're gonna get me out of this. So Harry is to go to prison, and immediately we have Anne, who wants to have, like, a private, like, talking with him to kind of see where his head's at. And so Anne desperately asks Julian to have a meeting with Harry, and Julian is like, well, like, sure, like, I'll get you to talk to talk with him. Like, I'll allow that. So Harry is to talk with Anne, and Anne is to ask like, how is Rich holding up, and how, like, Harry's holding up, and plus also, like, asking, like, hey, did you do it? Where he's like, of course I didn't do it. Like, of course. And, like, Anne is already naturally assuming that she knows that it's like, dude, Harry didn't do this. Like, I'm gonna try to find somebody that's gonna, like, basically, like, take care of the fact that, like, there's no way that Harry was to do this, because this guy is, like, proof that this did not actually happen. So Anne is trying to pull some strings to have some guy kind of put in the good word for Harry, and, like, try to abolish all this stuff that he's being accused of. So, but Anne is to talk to Harry and ask, like, hey, what should we tell Daisy? And Harry has this pause, and he kind of looks down, and then he's like, tell her nothing. So after Anne is to have this private talk with Harry, she is to go back and talk to Julian, and Julian is like, well, hey, like because eventually also Harry is mentioning about a Rule 43 to try to get Rich uh, to be able to be protected. And so Anne talks because Harry is assuming that Rich is going to consistently uh, like get like him put against Harry consistently, where uh, like Harry is going to get either beaten up or is going to get like hurt somehow because of Harry. So Harry is telling Anne about this Rule 43, and so Anne goes to Julian, and Julian is like, well, hey, like, I did what you asked before, but this is a big ask. Like, if anything, we here need to make that rule, not some prisoner. So Anne is just like, yeah, I get that, I know. But so Julian is just like, well, maybe I'll think about it. I'll put some real thinking time into your request. But in the meantime, how about you come to me, or how about you come with me to this place with this family, and bring Daisy along because this family has a kid her age, and they also have a pool. And Anna's like, and Julian's like, It's like, and so Anne is to go with Daisy to this spot where there's a pool, and so I guess to probably just like have like Julian consistently be winning over Anne and so on and so forth. So in this, so in here, so in the very beginning of this, we have a group of guys that are kind of like surrounding Harry, because eventually Harry is to talk to Tim Larson from episodes before while they're doing the laundry, and what one washing machine didn't work for Larson did work for Harry. So Larson is asking Harry, "Hey, like, why aren't you wearing like since you're wearing the bracelet, like, why aren't you escaping out of here? Like, you should be able to easily do that with the bracelet." And Harry's like, "Well, yeah, but my brother though." And Larson's like, "Oh, okay, I can understand that." Where it's like, no matter what Harry can do, like Rich is still going to be in this prison, and because of whatever is going on with Harry, they could use Rich to get back at Harry. So, like, via this prison. So, because when anybody is to ask about anything, it's all to come down to one person giving every single person in this prison orders, whether it's the guards or it's the prisoners. Everybody is all to hear word from Golding. So Harry or one guard is to take Rich after he's done sweeping up, and Harry is to see Rich go off with this guard, and so Harry is to follow them, and so Harry follows these guys to. All of a sudden, Harry's seeing Rich being held by this guy by uh like glass or something. And so Harry is now having to put his hand in some vice for them to go and try to take some saw-like tool to try to take off the bracelet. So we just see that Harry is telling Rich, like, hey, like, we've been here before. If anything, like, there's going to be no problems here. Because Rich does blame Harry for what is to be his life now. Rich is blaming Harry for why someone had pulled the trigger on Barbara and why Rich is in prison right now. He's blaming it all on Harry. And when Harry is doing this thing with this bracelet to eventually protect Harry, all of a sudden we have this grinder, this saw thing to take off hopefully this bracelet, but it doesn't happen that way. The pieces start flinging out and hit everybody to where they're all bleeding, and eventually Rich is to get this guard or this prisoner away from him, but eventually the guards grab him, and so Rich is yelling to Harry like, "I'm sorry, like if anything, like it's not your fault." So Rich kind of makes amends for what he had said earlier, like really just blaming Harry for all of his problems because the bracelet doesn't give good luck to everyone, like cuz Rich isn't exactly getting the best of luck right now. But neither is Harry technically. So uh so Harry eventually starts to be able to kind of buy little bits of time here and there to just kind of talk to Rich. Like Harry is telling like Rich, it's like, "Hey man, be strong. Like hey, like we like if anything, like this isn't like the easiest thing or but like we're gonna make it through this. Like we're gonna make it through it." So boo. So Winters is talking to some some person in filing because they're wanting to look over the whole entire Maria case. And it seems that this took 2 days worth of finding, but eventually somebody finds this information and gives it to Winters, and Winters scrolls over it, and he does not like what he sees. So Winter brings this thing of evidence to Fearsome and is like, "Yeah, like it seems like you're trying to go out of your way to not have this case be solved. Like you single-handedly had your prime suspect of this case and you barely asked him a thing. Like, there is some weird reason here that you went out of your way to not solve this case, and so, like, we're gonna book you on suspicion. Or we're gonna book you on something. Because obviously you had your prime suspect, like, paperwork and all, and you decided not to pull the trigger on that. And so after they go on like fearsome suspicions, and then eventually Surrey is to ask Winters about Harry and Winters' last case. And so Winters mentions to Surrey, like, well, Winter mentions to Surrey, well, when Harry and Winter went out, Harry had made the assumption that the guy that they were going after was unharmed, and Harry was wrong. Harry made a gamble, Harry lost. And so Winters no longer trusted Harry after that, making an assumption that somebody could have been unarmed and they were actually the opposite. So but Winters had mentioned that, like, yeah, just because of that one little blip of a problem before between both Harry and Winter, hasn't affected what has been going on with all of this stuff recently. that Winter is really trying to do and put his best foot forward to try and like do the best like police work that he can and try to deliver swift and good justice. So Winter is trying to confirm to Suri like, hey man, like I'm not slipping. Like I'm gonna do the right thing. Like I'm like gonna go out of my way to try to do the right thing. And it seems like Harry is trying to do the right thing too. And plus it seems like Harry, his luck is just really consistent right now. And it seems that everything that Harry is saying seems to be right. So I need to keep on following this streak of just like Harry is correct consistently. So that's when Winter goes and takes down Fearsome. And like just is gonna like audit the crap out of every like Fearsome's decisions or whatever from his probably his whole entire career, because it's like like yeah, this guy like made some poor freaking decisions, so we're gonna freaking ping it on him. We're gonna take this guy down because he made some stupid decisions. So, and it was obvious that other police officers said, dude, like, this guy was trying to not solve this case. Desperately trying to not solve this case for whatever freaking reason. So, so Orwell had gotten the paperwork that Rich could have been dissolved of all of his crimes, because the overalls that Collins had came back with Barbara's DNA on it, which would clear Richard from being guilty of killing Barbara, because smoking gun for Rich, yeah, that doesn't quite do it when it's not even in his right hand, or in his correct hand, I mean. But Orwell just sits on that information. He finds out that it's like, well, hey, like, Richard could be cleared with all of stuff, but he just sits on it for the entire day. And so when Orwell eventually does hand in the paperwork, Winter is like, Orwell, like, when did you get this? And so Orwell is like, well, yeah, so, like, I got it sometime today. And Winter is like, why didn't you immediately get this out there so that way we can clear Richard of all these charges? And Orwell's is like, well, yeah, just because I was SOL before, like, it doesn't mean that I should immediately just like jump over backwards to try to like resolve something that Harry had gotten correct. And so, like, I think we're really going to start to see, like, Winter, like, it's kind of interesting how in the very beginning of this season, like, we had Winter who was just, like, he thought, like, Orwell was, like, his, like, butt buddy, or his, like, his number one. And so all of a sudden, Winter is now just like, Orwell, you're a lazy piece of like, and so, like, Winter is starting to see, like, Suri as his number one. And so, like, that feels really good. That feels really great that we're, like, seeing this turnaround now. But anyways, so Harry is to eventually start looking around for his brother in this prison. And he's like, hey, like, where is my brother Richard? Like, where is he? And so he asked the prisoners, and they're like, I don't know where your brother is. So eventually Harry is to ask one of the guards, and the guards is to mention that Rich is sick, and I think he's back in his room. and the guard is going to take Harry to where Rich is. And so Harry goes to Rich's room to see Richard just getting beaten like a bloody pulp, repetitiously getting hit, punched, kicked, whatever. And so Harry is wanting to try to get in there to stop these guys from beating up Rich. But like he's asking the guards to help him, they're not going to do jack crap, nothing. Harry is trying to break the door down, but of course, like this is a pretty strong door, so Harry's having huge problems. So eventually the guards are like pulling Harry off of this door, and so Harry is desperately just watching his brother get beaten up. And then the very last thing we are to see in this episode is Julian poking his portion of face out this door to just be like, "Hey Harry, how's it going?" And so that is the big reveal that Julian had been watching on as Richard was getting beaten up. And the big reveal is that Julian is Golding. And for the next couple of episodes, we're gonna eventually, I'm assuming, like resolve the whole Golding thing. But yeah, like we've been building up for this episode for a while. I already knew that Julian was Golding, and this kind of shows that now. And so, really, I tried to like give some clues or maybe some hints that Julian could quite possibly be Golding. But this cements it now. So really, like I already knew he was Golding. I've seen this whole entire season. Like there's probably some episodes that like my life just becomes a blur, so I don't remember every single bit of this episode. But I knew the whole like punchline at the end of this, so it was just kind of building to that. But yeah, so I think I covered most of this episode, but there's probably some details here and there that I just. Um, but yeah, so like I probably didn't cover when Orwell went and talked to Fearsome. I kind of just I didn't really care about that moment. To me, I was just like, eh. Um, Something I didn't really care about. But other than that, yeah, like really, I think I covered most. Well, I also didn't cover the Anne talking to Daisy dialogue, but that was really just to already confirm what the dialogue between Julian and Anne was. That Daisy is eventually going to go with Julian and Anne to see these people with this pool, and yeah, like so that really just kind of covers like a bulk of this stuff that I didn't even mention, because there's some stuff where I just won't bring up because I don't feel it's important enough to like, and it kind of feels like there is some dialogue that ends up getting backed over where it's just like, oh well, like this is kind of like the same conversation that you had with some other person, but now you're having it with this person reconfirming what you had said before, and so I just feel like it's pointless or it's moot. So with that said, I'm going to call the rest of this review moot. Hopefully, you guys really are just going to eventually enjoy the rest of this season, and hopefully, you guys will hopefully like what is to be the rest of this series. If you guys want to check the whole entire thing out with me, that'll be perfectly fine, because in time, I hope to eventually do that. I don't know if these episodes will kind of come as like every other day, like especially because I'm kind of winding down also on Blade the series, and plus also certain days will be like, well, hey, I have to cover this show now, and so I'm going to do that. But really, I'm going to at least try to like make this much more consistent than it ever was. Uh, because really, like, you kind of get into a lot of things, and then you completely forgot you like weren't even doing certain things anymore, and then you're like, oh, I guess I gotta get back to that. Like, there are so many like shows that eventually I just stopped watching, or there were certain shows that just got a donut hole's worth of zero for views, so I just stopped watching something. But then I realized later they went so well. But with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.